Much. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay, so we will start now. First of all, hello Amna, how are you?
Hi, Alhamdulillah, I'm great. What about you, आप कैसी हैं?
I'm also fine. Okay, so we are going to do this interview in English because since it's international, so we will not be speaking Urdu. And let's just start. Firstly, thank you so much. It is literally my pleasure to have you here. Let's just start the interview. So my first question for you is, in your opinion, what are the biggest barriers for achieving gender equality in Pakistan, and how can education help overcome them?
The biggest barriers in getting gender equality in Pakistan is that the people of Pakistan, I think they themselves are the biggest barriers here because especially the men of our country who take everything so fragilely who take everything on their ego, which is actually very fragile, that because of them we can't really progress. There are men in our society who believe in a progressive mindset, who believe in equality, but at the same time there are men and there are women, there are people in general in Pakistan who themselves don't believe in it. So if you don't believe in it, if the mass does not believe in it, how are you supposed to achieve it? And education comes in handy at that time when when you need to change people's mindset, because in Pakistan we do not have the concept of civic education. Civic education basically teaches you what being a citizen is. Civic education basically teaches you what your rights are, your responsibilities are, what makes you a citizen. And being that aware, if you're that aware, if civic education is present in your curriculum and stuff, you become more informed citizens. And as you are more informed citizen, as you are a more informed citizen who is not really just backed up by the stereotypical remarks of other genders and stuff, so you become progressive as well. So I think that education can definitely help in achieving gender equality. And the very reason why we can't as Pakistanis achieve it is because of the people and our culture, and how intertwined our culture and how religion is used as a barrier to stop achieving gender equality, while in fact our religion is the biggest indicator of gender equality being existed, because in our religion every place it's written women are equal, men and women are equal. So like it's just the interpretation of our religious text which is being used in a way to like curb down women who try to speak, curb their voices who try to speak, and then just appreciating men in whatever they do. So it's the people, it's the society, unfortunately, we're in.
To be really honest, I really agree with you on the religious fact, and it is such an interesting point which is there. So we'll move towards our second question, which is: despite constitutional protections and international human rights commitments, why do you think gender inequality and domestic violence continue to persist in Pakistan?
Oh, domestic violence continues to persist in Pakistan because with every other household, with every family you see in Pakistan, there is this very strong word attached to it. It's an Urdu word called izzat, which means respect. So when your respect is tied to your marriage, when your respect is tied to how good of a wife you are or how good of a husband you are, husband thing does not even matter as such, but how good of a wife you are is what determines your marriage and what shows the people, oh, like they're a very happily married couple, yeah, stuff, right? So when we talk about domestic abuse, domestic violence, the women in Pakistan, they fail to recognize the fact that they are being abused. They fail to recognize what is abuse. And even if they do recognize they're being abused, they don't talk against their perpetrator, because if they do, that the other person is their husband, where will they go? They don't have financial liberty, they don't have financial freedom. In a marriage, in a society like ours, where we are moving towards a society where women are also achieving their education, receiving their education and achieving stuff, but at the same time the majority is not educated, and when they are not educated, they cannot live for themselves, they're not independent. So marriages in our country are an exchange between two things. For men, it's an exchange for their desires, and for women it's an exchange for her finances, because at first her finances are being managed by her father, but once she's married, her finances are managed by her husband, who in terms gets to rape her whenever he wants to, who asks him to do everything he wants to. She is the one serving his family, his parents, although he's the one who should be serving them. So, and she just becomes, a kind of a maid or a house help in his house, which just gives him extra pleasure as well. So because of the women in our country who are not really educated, they depend financially for themselves and for their children on this specific man. So how would they report that man which provides for them to the authorities? Because that would not mean that she is getting justice. That would mean that she and her children are not getting financial assets now, because there's no one who will be there to help them financially, right? And then the negative connotation which is attached with being a divorced woman, being a woman whose husband is in jail, is something which will also impact her mental health as well. So this is the reason, and they don't really know how to approach such stuff. They don't really know what constitutes of being abused, and even if they are aware, even if they know whatever is happening with them is wrong, they wouldn't do or say or speak anything for the sake of their children. So I think that is something which is why, despite constitutional protections, despite human rights, whatever we have inspired by the human rights committees and stuff, we are unable to get justice for these people, and they are not confident or brave, or maybe they're not competent enough to ask for justice as well, because they believe that justice for them, if justice is served, so will their financial records, financial resources be taken away from them. So it comes, if one comes, the other goes, and they have to make the hard decision. And that would definitely be that they'll be keeping their children before themselves, and they wouldn't really want that their children's education or their children's finances gets compromised just because, she was feeling that she's being abused.
Wow, I love that. Okay, now we have a third question, which is, how can schools, colleges, and universities better educate young people about gender equality and respect to help prevent domestic violence?
In our country, the concept of consent is not seen. People do not really know what consent means, and that has genuinely destroyed lives of so many people, regardless of their gender. Lives have been destroyed just because of people not being able to understand what consent or respecting the other or treating the other equally means. So what happens in our country is that very first thing, if we talk about consent, so consent means agreeing something. If you even search Google for the definition of consent, which I searched like 4 or 5 months back, I was just searching essay, and what came was that it has to be a very expressive and enthusiastic yes. That is what consent is. Anything, if you get a yes after 100 no's, it is not a yes. If you get a yes after being forced into saying a yes, after being blackmailed into saying a yes, it is not a yes. And people fail to recognize this. People think, she said yes, but at what cost? Was she scared? Was she taken at a place she had no other option? Was she in any way or any shape or form, in any capacity, was she pressured? They fail to recognize this, and they believe that consent just means a yes. No matter the means of getting that yes, no matter how we came till that yes, right? We don't really see whatever is happening before it, behind it. So the concept of consent is not taught. It is something which people try to understand once something bad has happened to them. That's genuinely what I feel like, that people around me, they got to know, they don't even realize that they have been sexually abused till they just get to know, there's something like consent which exists. Is there something like consent? Is it real? So this is something which people, even at university, even at workplace, even during their jobs, they fail to recognize, and is one of the biggest factors for not respecting consent or for not respecting the other gender. Like when it comes to men, one of the biggest reasons is that in Pakistan we do not have sex education, and the means to which these people by which these people get to know about about the biology of a human is through pornography, which is blocked obviously in Pakistan. But do you know that Pakistan is like the second or third largest country in the world which downloads VPN and stuff just so that they see all of this, right? So when the exposure is through pornography, when the exposure is through something which is so belittled, that makes women feel so belittled, like if a man is learning to like, if a man is learning how sexual relationships should happen, or they happen, you can see, like, even in those videos, most of the time there is coercion. There is no concept of consent. They just see a girl, they just see a woman, they think of it as a sex object. That's it. They don't think of that as a living person having values, having opinions, having boundaries. They don't see that. What they see is, oh, that's a woman. And then their mind starts operating in a way that it should not, because that is not the mind of how a respectful man, or in fact a respectful woman, should as well operate. Because in cases in Pakistan as well, we have cases. I know a friend who's a guy who was assaulted by a female tuition teacher of him. So this is something, the concept of consent and respect is so not found in our society, that we see all of these incidents happening and stuff. And these incidents not only include the rapes of the 7-year-old Zainab, yeah, the rape of Muntaha, but they also include the silence of all our mothers, all our sisters, all our women who cannot express themselves in what has happened between them and their husbands in a four-walled room, locked room inside their bedroom. They don't express it. They don't even know it. So, like, if you have education regarding consent, if you have good sex education, if you know what it means to respect the other gender, you would not just constrict them to being an object of desire, because they're not that. They're so much more than that. You cannot just objectify someone just because you feel like so. You cannot objectify people. And if our schools, our universities, and our colleges try to include in their curriculum what respect, what consent, what coercion means, so it would genuinely help the young to understand that they need to respect others. They need to respect others. They need to understand the concept of consent, and that the other person, the teacher they are with, and the students who are sitting with them, they also are as equal to them as they themselves are. Just because they are a man and the others are women does not restrict them to an object.
Okay, since you picked up such an interesting question, I have this personal question from you, which is, what do you think, like, what role does mothers play in shaping the men in our country? What do you think about that? What is your perspective? Now you can continue answering.
Okay. So the mothers, what they do is they tend to ignore what their sons are doing. They tend to focus more on their daughters. They tend to focus more that what their daughters are doing, if their daughters are talking to a guy. Because if you imagine in a Pakistani household, a daughter talking on phone with her guy friend versus a son talking on his phone with his female friend, what would concern the mother more? Obviously, the daughter talking to the guy friend, right? Not the son. They're not. If a son is coming home late, that's okay. But if a daughter is coming home late, that's not okay. So we have this double standards which exist in our society just because of the gender you were born with. If you are a son, your mother is different, and if you are a daughter, your mother is different. Despite being the very same person, she's different. And I think that is mainly because of the fact that our society has been like this since centuries now. Because it has been the same. Mothers always tend to ignore what their sons are doing, and they tend to be it's not that they're evil for their daughters, no. They're just protective of their daughters more because they understand the society, they understand how men are, and they somehow think that it might be okay. Because while growing up, they might have faced the same issues. While growing up, they might have faced the same issues by the people in their family. Even right now, they might be facing domestic abuse by their husbands in the closed room. No one knows that. So they have also been taught this way that they have to accept the way it is. They have to accept, and all they can do is, the best they can do is protect their daughters and not teach their sons. And that's what need to change in Pakistan. You have to protect your daughters, but protect from whom? The men outside, right? And what do you do of the men? Do you just leave them roaming around? No. You teach your sons so that no daughter is scared and no mother is scared to be so protective of their daughters. If you teach your sons to be respectful, to be mindful, to understand, to read a room well, to not force themselves upon anyone just because they thought that the girl is asking for it, even when the girl is doing nothing, and restricting her to a single object, and just respecting the woman of their house. That's not how it should be. Why is that every person needs to bring in your mother or your sister in an argument for the other person to feel empathetic? Why is that you can't feel empathy for other women as well, for other people as well? Why does it has to restrict into like all just the people you are closely tied with, right? Respect is not something that you get just because you are with that she's your daughter, so you have to respect her. She's your mother, so you have to respect her. She's a woman, she's a person, she's a human being, and you have to respect them. That is something which is not really found in Pakistani households as of yet. So, and mothers kind of also influence this because they have accepted this notion of whatever is happening around them. And our generation is the one that has to break the curse now.
I really wanted to hear this, and I think nobody could ever bring that out better than you. So thank you so much for answering this question. Now, last question is,
Okay.
if you could recommend one policy or educational reform that would have the greatest impact on promoting gender equality and preventing domestic violence in Pakistan, what would it be and why? Take your time.
Can you repeat what? Curriculum में
Okay, I'll repeat that. No, no. I'll repeat the question again, okay? If you could recommend one policy or educational reform that would have the greatest impact on promoting gender equality and preventing domestic violence in Pakistan, what would it be and why?
Having gender as a subject in school years. You have gender studies on university level. You do have, but that's also an elective. If you want to take it, you can take it. That is not compulsory. But having compulsory gender studies related class since your school life, it should expose you. It should give you the exposure to like get to know the other gender beyond than just being an object, yeah, beyond just fitting into the stereotypical roles. And the question you first asked about mothers, the same question can apply to teachers as well. So probably you need to train your teachers in a way as well that whatever knowledge they pass down, it is something which is not stereotypical. It is something which is more progressive, right? So having training your teachers for a more progressive mind and only appointing those teachers in institutions around the country can really help because teachers play an important role. And what I said about the gender studies class, it should be compulsory, and like if you will be studying it for an year, it shouldn't really be a recurring subject that you have to that you have to teach every year or something, that you have to study every year or something. You can have it in at grade 8 or 9 when students are coming at more they have hit puberty and like they're more curious and stuff about and they're more curious about stuff. So maybe of course for an year where in different classes they're taught on different subjects like consent. One class can be on consent, the other class can be on respect, one class can be on the glass ceiling effect, one class can be on workplace equality, one class can be like on different topics when the student can understand as well what they mean. And what I said earlier that it should be just an year-long thing, I think I will not agree to that again, because I think it should be a constant thing, because if you're instilling something like this since a young age in children and they are being exposed to it constantly while growing up, if this is something which stays with them just like science does, just like maths does, just like English does, if a gender studies subject is also staying with them since they're children till they are in like grade 9 or grade 10, then I really believe that that can make a huge difference, and this is in the reform that should be included. Yeah.
Thank you so much. To be really honest, I'm really glad that I chose you for this interview because I think I myself have learned some of the things which you said, and you are really like inspiring, taking out time and being here.
It was
I'm
very
really glad you
interesting.
came.
I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
And I
I
hope this
think we are done
podcast.
now. Having a conversation with you.
Same. It
Bye.
was lovely. It was lovely interacting with you. Bye bye.